All right. Hello, Odilia.
Hi.
I am so happy that you are here because you and I recently connected
Uh-huh.
through our mutual friend, Samantha
Sammy.
from, yes, Vintage Jewelry Addicts. And she
Yeah.
said, "Oh, you have to talk to Odilia." So I said, "Yes, I do." So why don't we
Awesome.
start off with you introducing yourself and letting us know what it is that you do?
Sure. I'm happy to be here. My name is Odilia Barton. My business styled by Odilia. It is a vintage fashion and accessories business that I have had over 20 years. I mean, like I started old school, like eBay, selling like vintage gloves and things like that. And over the years, the store sort of changed into I specialize in like really high end designer pieces, clothing, etc., kind of touching on what's trendy, but I'm a big fan of the classics, like vintage Gucci, vintage Oscar de la Renta, I love the 70s, iconic pieces, signed and unsigned. But over the last, I guess, 5 to 10 years, I just really started more and more. I sold jewelry as part of the fashion and accessories biz this whole time. But I sort of deep dived into jewelry like the last 5 or so years. I mean, really deep dived. And then when I started doing a lot more live sales, when that took off on Facebook and my face and Instagram and that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of certain jewelry designers. I've always collected. And I don't know, it became its own kind of animal. And so I also do coaching, which is like now that I've sort of stepped back from selling full time, except on my private Facebook page. I mean, my it's not private, it's public, but on my own Facebook page,
Right.
I also coach women who are getting started with live sales or just new to this business in general, resale and vintage.
Ah,
Vintage accessories and vintage fashion. And specifically, what's really taken off is I did a masterclass and some content before I started coaching called vintage jewelry for the fashion girl, who's been just women who are
oh,
just getting started in with vintage jewelry to in addition to their fashion. With they know a lot about clothes and they love it, but they're a little leery about selling vintage jewelry because it's a whole other animal. So I did like some content with Sammy where I just wrote, here's some basic things to look for, looking for vintage jewelry, and here's some things to watch out for, to date it and stuff like that, and just sort of took off. But it's really fun. I do coaching just in regular live sales, and then in ID and vintage jewelry, and then how to post things like that.
all right. So, I mean, because I'm
It's a
going to
lot.
say, yes, I'm going to say, compared to me, you are like the queen of vintage because not only are you knowledgeable, you're super stylish
Oh,
and you're so willing to help other people, and I think
yeah.
that's something that is very admirable, especially in this community. I mean, everybody that I've come across has been really nice, but not everybody is willing to be so open and share what they
Yeah.
know as it relates to vintage fashion jewelry and all the things that come along with that.
I think that's how
So
we're like raised in this industry for sure.
yeah,
So like,
yeah,
yeah.
because people are so worried, I guess there's an air of competitiveness,
Yeah.
or maybe people feel like, well, I don't want, everybody to know what I'm doing or how I'm doing it or whatever.
I gotta admit,
So,
I kept quiet about like what I didn't share a lot for a long time just because you weren't
mhm,
supposed to.
right.
And I guess about 5 years ago or so, um, I don't know, like it doesn't really, it didn't seem to go along with the way that I lived the rest of my life. And as I became like more successful in live sales, and like when you're doing Etsy and eBay and all that stuff for years, you really don't come in contact, I mean, with a lot of sellers,
Right,
like
right.
really contact. Everyone's you're sort of your own island, and everybody else is the buyer or seller. But you don't have a lot of back and forth community type of thing. Then the Facebook came, and all the social media, and all of a sudden you're with a lot more sellers. You're talking to sellers. You're dealing with buyers online, and I don't know. It just didn't. I don't know. I came to a point where I just really wanted to like give back. And it was really clear when I started doing live sales, it was like, wow, I know a lot more than most people. And it's simply
Yes,
because I've been
yes.
doing it. And that's not being funny. Or like have a big head, because it was clear I'd been doing it a really long time because I was older than
Hmm.
most people. And I'd been doing it a lot longer. And so I was getting a lot of questions and fielding a lot of questions. And part of my live sales is is a little bit, my dad thinks I'm like he goes, you would sell more if you weren't so long-winded. But I mean, I like talking about designers, and I like, giving information, and, hey, this piece has a barrel clasp. And if you didn't know, the barrel clasp came around in the 30s, but it came back around in the 60s and the early 70s. And that's how you can kind of date it. And I started doing that
Yes.
in live sales. It was just natural for me to give that kind of information and talk about it. And it was fun, and you get a little some education as well. And people really enjoyed it. And then people were sliding in my DMs asking questions. And I don't know, it didn't bug me. In fact, I found it just another way. I mean, I believe in service in the rest of my life. So it's just another way to be of service. And so it's just led to coaching. But you're right. We're not taught to like share our info. I got to keep it to
Yeah.
ourselves,
Yeah.
because otherwise we don't want everyone else. But it makes, it's not gonna harm your business to help others. So yeah.
Yes, yes. And I love that you are so passionate about live selling, because I am too.
Yeah.
It's my favorite way to sell right now.
Me too.
And I mean, I actually, it's the only way I'm selling right now, because I love it so much. It's so
Yeah.
fun, it's fast paced, the energy is there, you can engage with your buyers. And I think it just really works with my personality and where I
Yeah.
am,
Yeah.
in my business right now. So let's talk about that. How long have you been doing live sales, and how did you get started with live selling? I mean,
I I guess Sammy's group was one of the first ones I came across. I was
hmm.
on, and I'm not kidding, like my entire career, I was so confident in my taste and in my own ability to buy to resell, like my own. I just knew that was, everybody has their own, like, special talent and superpower in this business, whether it's the data or the whatever. Mine, I knew that when all else failed, I know how to buy to resell. I trust my taste. I know people are going to love what I pick. I was very comfortable in that. So only I could get more people to see my stuff, because when they can see it at a
Right.
market, or a pop-up or something, then they buy it. But how do I get that? And then, I mean, all of a sudden people were talking to me about Instagram sales and Facebook lives. I was like, I don't know. I don't know about that. All of a sudden I was sort of thrust in quickly. And it was so funny because I just started, I was like, I'm just going to get on there. Just start posting and check them out. And I started checking out the vintage clothing accessories pages on Facebook. And it was on it was in around Thanksgiving of, like, I want to say 2020. Yeah, like
Okay.
2020. Yeah, Thanksgiving, or the Thanksgiving before 2020 or something like that, when we were all stuck at home, right? And and I just took off. My sales just took off, like immediately, just posting on Facebook. And I was doing a special project with the designer Diane Freese, the vintage designer from the 80s. I
Oh.
Yes, I was working with her directly. She still lives in Hong Kong, and I was the sole distributor in the United States of her vintage archives, of which there were tons. She had recently closed a 10,000 square foot warehouse that she'd been in since the 80s. Early 90s rather. And I was like, okay. So it was fun. I loved her. I was a big fangirl. So that was a cool project, but I was able to bring that to the pages. And then that was like Thanksgiving. And then I remember January of 2020 or 2021, maybe that next year, I did my first one. And I was like, I know I can do this, because I'm not afraid to speak. I've been watching other people's, and I was like, I can do that. I talk, I speak in other parts of my life out in front of people. I do some group speaking. So I wasn't worried about that. And it was just, some people take to things like a duck to water. And I just sort of took to it.
Hmm.
And I made like I think I made like was so funny. I was so like shocked. I didn't make like thousands of dollars my first one, but I made like I think I made like $500, $600 my first one, and then I just never stopped. I just loved it, and it's so funny because on Sammy's page, Vintage Boss Babes, I still have the highest sales number made in one live sale. So I hope
Oh,
somebody, I know,
congratulations. That's
until
awesome.
somebody breaks it, and that'll be sad, but it's okay. But I mean, I just took to it. It was sort of my personality. The only thing for me was to like to get the timing and bring it into like my own speed and my own thing.
Mhm.
And I love it. And that's how I got started. And I coach it because people are so leery that aren't used to
Yes,
speaking in front of people, or who
yes,
are
they
used to
are.
being behind the screen, which I was for years, but I was dying to find a way to get in front of the screen. I just didn't know how. And so I coach them about not being like me or like anyone else, but doing their own. It's really about protecting your greatest asset in a live sale, which is time, and
Mhm.
not doing things to waste time, whether it's bringing the wrong inventory, or taking too many questions during it, or spending too much time on this or that. And that's kind of what I coach on. That everybody just needs to like protect their greatest asset, which is time, and then just bring all the little pieces together so that you have the best chance of making money.
All right. So, because I talk to a lot of jewelry resellers who want to do live sales,
Mhm.
on whatever platform, but that is always the thing. They're always so nervous about, well, I'm not good on camera, or they worry that nobody's going to come in their show,
Right.
or they worry that like something horrendous is going to happen during the live. I've said this, many times. I said, I've had crazy things happen during a live
Yeah.
show. I've had Amazon deliveries, I've had power outages, you know what I mean? The neighbors mowing or dogs barking, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, how do you, I guess, get people to feel confident that it's okay? You don't have to be perfect to do this. It's not some fancy Hollywood production, right? It's just,
Exactly. I put it right just a lot like that, that this is not, it's not brain surgery. Like literally
right,
anyone can do it. With a few things, maybe I can um, let me look at one of your past lives, or let me just, take a look at your vibe or whatever and go, okay, there's a few aesthetics things that we can fix right away, like your
right,
background about, and hey, go put on some red lipstick like I always do. Go dress in black, just do something different, shake it up. We'll talk about things like that. But really, if you follow a pretty simple program of things that really just makes it zip along, a little bit of let's just go from A to B to C, and take this, let me look over your inventory, make sure we're pricing it at a competitive. Because my thing is live sale, this is just me, but for me, the second word of live sale is sale. So I'm not gonna sell something at the same price that I sell it when I post it. I mean, why would anybody come to watch me? And that's one of the things that I believe in. And if you, but just not to be nervous. They're like, well, you're so like energetic, and I'm so like low key. Okay, then do it low key. You don't have to be me. I don't know that I could sit through somebody who like blah 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 as much as me. But you just have to find your own speed and your own vibe, and then keep things moving. Bring out the right inventory, but that means the right inventory at the right price. And it doesn't have
mhm,
to be what I sell. It doesn't have to be anything near what I sell. It just has to be the right inventory for a live sale. Why am I
got it,
here? I don't want to buy something I can go get at the local thrift store right now. Why am I here? Show me something that's like excites me, whether it's a cool $10 t-shirt or a $300, Chanel wristlet, which is a steal, but I have to see, whatever it is.
right.
If it's jewelry, then let me see it on you. Let's look at it. Let's have fun with it. And it could be something as simple as like, let's make sure the aesthetic is great before we start, and then let's look at your pieces. And of course, we talk about IDing them carefully and being, not guessing. Nothing can turn off a person more than, well, if you don't know what that is, then I'm not going to trust you to buy it. And then it's going to, you don't want to do
Mhm.
things that turn people off and then they keep scrolling. So we talk about things like that as well. But obviously these are not serious, serious infractions. Anyone can fix these things. Anyone can follow these little rules. It's not brain surgery. Anyone can do it.
Right, right. And I totally agree. Like, and you don't even have to be extroverted. You don't have to have a big
No,
personality. You can be shy. You can be quiet. If you really know your stuff, like you say, as long as you're selling the right items and you're, targeting the right buyers.
right.
And it'll take a little while, to find your
Yes,
groove and find
right.
what works for you. But yeah. So what platforms do you do live selling on?
Generally, I'm on Facebook. I do District,
Yeah, I like
district.net, which
selling
is
there too.
I do. And that's about it right now. Like I said, when I hit 20 years, a couple of years ago, I said, I'm going to kind of step back and not do as much. And everybody was like, sure you are. And so it's hard because I love live selling and I love, selling. So I love the business itself. I just love it. But I had the opportunity, but I have the opportunity to step back. So that's what I've been doing, sort of stepping back and just doing the occasional live sale on Facebook and District. And of course, coaching, which I love. And it's so funny because I decided, okay, I am first and foremost a lover of all things vintage, so especially jewelry and
Me
fashion.
too.
So I continue to buy incessantly when I at auction and things like that because I love it. So I have this studio. I'm in my office slash guest room, but I have a third floor studio that is just jammed full. A huge studio that it's my stuff, and then I have inventory that I never quite got to or haven't be able to down that. So I opened a Facebook page recently, which gives me the opportunity to just relax and do it on my terms. And it's super original. It's for me to sell off sell some of my inventory and share some of my things I've found over the last 20 years. And it's super original. It's called Odilia Sells Her Collection. I was like, well, that's what I'm doing. So it's called
Well,
Odilia
that
Sells Her
is
Collection.
unique. Nobody else will have that name.
That's true. Odilia sells her collection, 20 years of vintage. And it hasn't even been 3 weeks since I opened it. It's become super popular with obviously people that have been buying from my live sales the last several years. And
Oh.
I'm gaining some followers. But I mean, I've already had lots of sales because people are like, yeah, let's see what you don't want to keep showing us, and I can do it on my own. So I'm thinking, to answer your question, I'm thinking of doing the occasional live sale there as well. But
Hmm.
I so I'm trying so the coaching is taking on its own life because it's something I can do to give back, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. But yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Not when I was full-time hustle, I was everywhere, and I was everyone to everything to everyone, just everywhere, posting and Instagram and private messaging and pop-ups and all that good stuff. But right now, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Facebook,
yeah.
District, and on my own page on Facebook, and then coaching.
Okay, so one of the questions I get asked a lot is, where do you find vintage jewelry to resell? So you
Yeah.
don't have to obviously give me your exact,
No, it's okay.
sources, but what tips or, advice would you give to somebody who's looking for resellable vintage jewelry?
Well, I mean, you start where you start. Start where we all started when it came to like vintage fashion and things like that. And it's usually like your neighborhood thrift stores or flea
Mm-hmm.
markets or estate sales. And
Mm-hmm.
I do all that. At this point in my career, I really like the high end stuff. I really enjoy it. And then I have great sellers who do markets like Brimfield and things like that who contact me now. Hey, don't want to tempt you, but this is what I got. And I'm a pretty easy mark. So I do that. But I love auctions. I love live auctions. I love going to antique stores and going, who's having a sale? Because I'm going to buy a bunch. So show me where the good stuff is, and And I hate to say it, but I am, God, I hate to say that a lot. I am a whatnot fanatic. I have spent a vulgar amount of money. I have a secret name so that people don't know who it is, because that is how much I spend on it.
Oh.
But a lot of it is just for me, for my collection, for
Hmm.
me privately. So, you know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might
Well, because
outbid someone who's trying to resell it. You know what I mean? So I have my own name, but I love when I can buy in bulk. So I
yes.
will go, I have no problem looking at who's selling vintage jewelry and going, hey, I'm interested in a bunch of these pieces. How are you, if you could treat me kind of great on the price, I would just buy all these. I think
Ah,
people don't negotiate enough, or don't go in there and offer to buy several pieces at a time to get a better price, because I am all about buying many pieces at one time, you know?
yeah.
So
And I think that saves you a lot of time as well, because as opposed to buying piece by piece,
piece
although
by piece, I can't do it. I don't do it anymore.
I do know one jewelry reseller, because she only sells like two brands, or
Right?
two designers rather, and
Uh-huh.
so she buys piece by piece because she's
Sure.
only looking for those
Those
specific
two.
designers.
Right.
But for the majority of us, it makes more sense
Right.
to buy as much as you can each time you go out, because it just
I
takes
just
too much time.
people are always like, all right, well, I don't have anything in my local thrift store, is very and then
Hmm.
I can't, like, I've always said it's all about like building those relationships. Now, I will go into my local and like closest antique store here, and I'm in a really expensive neighborhood, so or buy it. And so the antique store, it can be kind of pricey, but I will go in there and I will make friends. I have a great friend in there who sells in there, and she calls me and says, I'll be in here this weekend if you want to look at stuff before I put it out, and I'll get just a ton of beautiful brooches, for example, just a plate full before she puts them out at $10, $20 a piece, when she's going to put 60, 80, $100 on them, because she knows I might buy all of them. But I have made
Right.
that relationship. I mean, and you make them wherever you can at estate sales. I know estate sale people, and they're like, Odilia, we hate putting out clothing. We hate really tagging jewelry one by one. We make money on the furniture and the art and all that. Do you want to come take a look beforehand? Yes, I do. And it's building those relationships. So yes, thrift stores, estate sales, flea markets, that kind of thing. But you really do need to take that like initiative, because I have people. The majority of it, a lot of it comes to me now. But then
Hmm.
I do go into auction houses and things and just kind of, hi, I'm gonna tell you, this is what I'm looking for, and it's made a huge difference in my business. But you can't be very passive about it, because then you'll end up buying piece by piece by piece, and that takes forever. But I am a
Yeah.
big fan of buying a lot at one time. But if you're getting started, I mean, get up at 8 in the morning or whatever time and go to that flea market and see who's out there, because that's when they come out and they'd rather buy it to you. They'd rather sell it to you, excuse me, in a nice lot than have to sell it piece by piece all day long. They will.
Right.
But you got to introduce yourself and tell them you're willing to do that. I mean, I
Right.
can't stress that enough. Who doesn't want to have like that bird in the hand where they have to sell piece by piece?
Yeah, yeah. And not only that, but once they know you're serious, because this is what I've learned. Once they know that you're not someone who's trying to nickel and dime and
Right. And
flaky.
they'll never see you again.
Exactly. Once they know that, okay, she's serious, she's looking for this stuff and she will buy it if I have it,
Yes,
they will actually start saving stuff for you.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Also, I would say, and here's like me giving away a nice secret. I don't really care. If you start at I love Facebook auctions, live auctions, or silent auctions. Those auction pages on Facebook. There's a ton of jewelry ones, and I've been lucky enough to be part of some of the best ones on Facebook. I have stepped back a little bit, but
Mm.
I still mosey my way in there, and I started before I was, and the reason got invited to be one of those curated sellers is because they saw me buying. They already knew I
Oh,
had good
yeah,
taste,
yeah, yeah.
so I didn't have to like convince them I'd be a great buyer or show them all my references by the page. They'd seen me buying for a long time, and
Yeah, yeah.
so they were like, "Would you like to sell?" Or when I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about selling," yes, we know what you have. You bought from a lot, So that was an amazing way to get my foot in the door. But I wouldn't have felt confident going to one of the good ones, one of the top 5 ones, if I hadn't started at one of the lower end ones. They have like lower end, there's all kinds of vintage buy and sell groups and buy and sell auction or auction groups, excuse me, on Facebook. And not all of them are like, 40, 50, 150, $250 pieces. Some of them are much lower. So if you start, and if you can actually get your bearings in there buying, you can actually start, you can get some really good stuff,
Yeah.
if you know what you're looking for. It's a great place to start.
Yeah. And it's a little less overwhelming than trying to be on a
To
whatnot
compete with
show.
some of those higher ones where they go
Yeah.
high and it's much more competitive. If you start with one of the smaller ones where the things are a lot less expensive, it's a great way to make contacts with other sellers and who can, sell you things, buy and probably buy from you as well once you get going, and not probably will. And then because it's very, back and forth, and a great place to get started. First of all, I learned more from those auction pages about designers and about things to look for and not look for than I did in any book or any other, reference website. But I have a lot of jewelry books. I learned more from those pages than I did in any of those things. And so it's a great place to learn. I always tell people in coaching, those auction buy and sell pages, those obscure ones, especially the smaller ones, I learned so much. And in the higher end ones, I learned, no, we're not taking that. I'll tell you why. This is why that is not, this is not that. This is not that. This is you're going to have to deep dive, and they tell you, and then study groups on specific designers in Facebook is its whole other animal, right? But that's how I got into those as well. I mean, they're just great places to learn, as well as kind of get your confidence up about buying and selling, and of course, great places to buy things to resell, especially once you start getting to know a seller. If you buy from one seller in particular, then I have sellers that I bought from years ago, and now they're like, "Hey, Odilia, I've got some of this. I know you love 80s chunky jewelry. I know you love 80s belts. I've got all this, kind of thing." And I mean, it's all about the context, but also you learn so much from those pages, from being from just following women who've been in this business so much longer, and because it's their passion,
Yeah. And a lot of times you learn, but you also kind of get more, I guess, like discerning too. Like, you get more picky, you get more, you start to recognize, certain characteristics of the jewelry, so you can identify it easier.
Absolutely. And that's what I meant with the especially the higher end ones who deal with Haskell, and it's all Art Deco and Haskell and high-end sterling and that kind of thing. They're the first ones that will call you out when you if you try to post something, let's say, not, but if you were another seller trying to pass something off of. But the thing is, they're so willing to answer questions, and they're so willing to share information on those pages, and they're so willing to say, okay, that is not what you think it is, so get that off our page, and I learned so much by like trolling these pages. And then I was buying, and then eventually I was asked to sell, and that was so great, but I had already learned so much. But if you start on some of and a lot of the pages are like private pages, maybe they don't have as many followers, etc. But there's pieces starting at $5, $10, that kind of thing, $15. A lot of that price range, you get to know like designers, and you get to learn, okay, what's popular, and you can pick up things really inexpensively while you're learning and meet other sellers at the same time. And that's how you gain confidence, I think. Once you're like back and forth, you're like, okay, I got this. And it's so easy to deep dive into jewelry, into eras, and more so even than fashion. Like jewelry is there's just so much more to like deep dive into that I never really got into. And I feel really confident in a great knowledge of vintage fashion. But oh my gosh, I mean, vintage jewelry I never think I know enough. There's just so much.
Yes, I say that all the time. I say the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know.
Like I would never start my own page. I'm like except for like me selling my own collection, I would never like open my own group. I'm like, I don't know enough. But I mean, I do, but it's just intimidating because there's so much.
Okay, so we talked about live selling. We talked about um, kind of like how to find vintage jewelry. So let's talk about getting started because we didn't really cover that too much. And I know, like I said, I come across people every day who they come across something at a garage sale or at
Right.
the thrift store and they say, "Oh, this is a beautiful piece of jewelry. I think I want to start selling jewelry now."
Right.
So, what do you recommend for people who may not know, like maybe they already resell, maybe they sell clothes or something else, but now they want to niche down to jewelry or add that as an additional category to what they already sell? How
Yeah.
would you suggest they do that?
Well, and again, Sammy and I did a whole masterclass on this, and we actually wrote some content, like I said, about vintage jewelry, for the fashion seller. And what we talk about really is just starting with the basics. You know, okay, it's not Art Deco, but it has a lobster class. Okay, lobster class is a relatively contemporary
Right,
iteration. It's actually started in the 70s, so there will be a few 70s pieces, a very few. Comparatively with lobster classes, but the class they have a very specific square lobster class. Most lobster class are 90s and after, and then and we start with like basic things like that, and you can learn these things by looking up googling a certain class, learning, picking up books. Although again, I keep bringing it back to these fabulous like study groups in Facebook, but they have vintage jewelry collectives, vintage jewelry ID collectives. Get on those pages, because you can literally
yeah,
submit something. I mean, you could submit all day long if you wanted to. I think this is vintage. Is it? I think this is. For me, I never, if I don't know something is Haskell, unsigned Haskell or unsigned Niger or something like that, I don't just go say it is. Now, I submit things I do not know. I go look in my
right,
books, and if it's not my books, then I go right to the pros, and I'm like, I think this is Haskell, and this is why, but is it not? Yes, it is, or no, it isn't. Juliana, I check the databases. I don't ever just. I mean, gosh, you can you can get depressed if you're not a purist, but if you're a jewelry lover, vintage, and you go on eBay or Etsy and you see how many people are passing things off as Haskell or Juliana, you're like,
mm-hmm.
why are you where did you find the Juliana mark? And where on the database did you look in the database? Why are you IDing this Juliana? How did you get that? Well, so that's how I bought it, by a really reputable person. Okay.
Right, right.
I Okay, great. I mean, that can be a little depressing. I know. I listen to these jewelry lovers all day long on these chat boxes about why are people doing that, but it's just human nature. I mean, you buy something from someone who says it's Juliana, and then I'm like, it's Juliana. But if you are not someone who's going to go, who really is interested in vintage jewelry and wants to know why it is, then you might actually go sell that. So my point is, be knowledgeable, not just for your own edification, but for buying as well, not just for
Mm-hmm.
selling. I need to be able to sleep well at night, which means I'm not going to put a gemstone up there if I haven't tested it on my Presidium or whatever. I'm not going to put something up that says sterling, even if it says 925, if I haven't acid tested it. I'm not going to put a bakelite piece up there if I haven't tested it with semichrome. I mean,
Right.
I need to know, because it's not enough that somebody that sold it to me said it was. And that's where, because vintage jewelry is getting so big and popular, we're having a big problem with that, especially
Yeah.
fakes being passed off. I mean, there's a huge problem with that on eBay and Etsy, and you can go into 100 chats about that. But my point is, it's just education, and it's not, again, this isn't brain surgery. You can get on some fabulous pages on Facebook or get those books. There's some great jewelry identification books out there. Some of them have been around a long time, and we'll get you started on clasps and eras and what to look for. What is what is Art Nouveau versus Art Deco? What is reticent of the 50s? Did you know AV rhinestones didn't came out until the 50s? So it's not going to be earlier than that kind of thing. And that is all easily studied in books and on pages, or again, by trolling those awesome auction pages on Facebook, because you learn so much.
Yes, yes. And uh, for those of you who don't know, I actually did an entire podcast episode on the best Facebook groups for jewelry resellers. And I listed,
Awesome.
I want to say about 50-ish,
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
Facebook
Awesome.
groups. And
That is
so
great.
Yeah, I'll throw a link
That
to
is
that
great.
episode in case
Put a
somebody wants
put a
to
link to
listen.
that.
But you're right, because I have learned so much from those Facebook groups as opposed to just kind of doing my own research, because you actually have access to people who are experts on
Experts.
whatever it is,
And
bake
experts
light, whatever.
love to talk
Yes,
about
they
what they
do.
know.
They do. And they can, some of them are so good. You can just throw a picture up and they'll give you the whole history on it, right?
Mm.
So that's good. I think that's probably key. And especially nowadays, as you know, like you said, the vintage jewelry resale market gets more and more saturated, which
Right.
means more and more sellers are coming on, and more, which means more and more people who don't know what the heck they're doing.
Exactly.
We really have to be vigilant, like you said, and at least have the knowledge to stand behind the
Yes.
pieces that we're selling.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so much
Yeah,
knowledge out there online that it's really, it doesn't make sense to not to not know what you're selling. Again, I have to sleep at night. I will sit up all night if I put something up there as a gem, as a garnet, and I wasn't really sure if it was a garnet. And people do it all the time and don't worry about it because they're not all that concerned about it. But as like you said, the market gets saturated, well, people are going to naturally like be attracted to people who know what they're doing. They're going
mm-hmm.
to pray away from those who it sounds a little iffy. It's like, I mean, would you be in a live sale and go, here's a perfect example. I think this is, I'm pretty sure this is 30s. Yeah, this is the 30s top. And then so okay, why? Why is it in 30s? Let me see the inside. How do you know? It's just, if they don't know, then guess what? I'm probably, first of all, not going to finish that live, but I'm also not going to purchase that because I expect someone who's showing to know what they're selling me. Like what?
Right.
And if you don't know, then I'm probably not going to invest in it just to get surprised. And it still happens to me with like
Yeah.
reputable sellers, especially when you're talking about like an auction, like a marathon auction, like on Whatnot, where there's so many pieces that maybe they were a little lax in testing some of this stuff or researching that. And I mean, I still will gamble and not be happy at the end. Okay, my loss, whatever. I know it wasn't what I thought it was, but this
That
is
happens
where
to all of us. That happens to all
happens
of
to all of
us.
us. And it still happens to me.
Yeah.
So, but you know, the more you know, it's just, you know, there's so much information out there. And of course there's ways to test. And the more you know about, okay, Haskell wasn't signed before the 50s, but these are things we need to look for. And that's where like groups like, I'm so name dropping, but like Haskell in the Game, hearing Haskell in the Game is one of my favorites about if you're looking for Haskell on Facebook. There's a huge vintage jewelry collective ID on Facebook, a couple of them that are wonderful.
Yeah. As a
The
matter of fact,
Juliana
I
groups.
linked several of them in that episode. So
If you
yeah,
can get
there's
Haskell, and if you liked Haskell and Juliana, I mentioned them already. They have
mhm.
the best books out there, the best. So there's just a
Yeah, and
lot of information out there.
for that Juliana group, the woman who literally wrote the Juliana book is the one who runs the group.
She runs
So
the group. Yeah, she
yeah,
literally wrote
so
the book.
why would you
She
not use her?
literally wrote the book.
She literally wrote the book.
And there's a couple of great books on there. And
Yes,
and
yes.
there's a fabulous Egyptian piece on the front of the book. I bought,
Oh, really? Yes,
I bought
yes.
that on because it was on the book. I just recently got that in. I'm so excited. The actual
Oh,
Egyptian piece.
wow.
So I
Oh,
know it's
wow.
Juliana because it's on the cover of the Juliana book.
Uh-huh.
but
That's
but there
amazing.
but I mean, I pour over that. I like Juliana. I'm not like obsessed with it, but I do love just like the obvious work that was put into these prong settings and these stones that I mean,
Yes.
I like to pour over the database just in case I accidentally run into one, you know, when I'm out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only that, but there's just something amazingly classic and
Yeah.
so unique, by the designs of those pieces, because you
Yeah.
just don't really see stuff like that today. I mean,
No,
you see people try to replicate it, but there's nothing compared to really studying an authentic piece and really breaking down the details about it and the construction and the materials and the stones and all these things, you know?
absolutely. Um, you know, and a lot of, if it's a little bit more, I mean, there's actual like websites now just dedicated to these designers. You can scroll on,
Hmm.
and some of them sell, but a lot of them is just information, and you can just learn so much. I love I like Kenneth J. Lane. I like his pieces from
Oh,
I've got
yes.
pieces from way back, but I think his 80s pieces are some of my favorite, and 70s pieces.
Hmm.
I mean, and you can actually look up online or on there are reference pages as well on online, and then I believe there's some good books on him as well, where you can see the difference in, it's like Coro, Trifari, you see the configuration and the revolution of the tags and the font. These are things that you need to like look up and start studying, and then you'll recognize them easily. Eisenberg, the older part ones were just larger fonts and not and just script, as opposed to script rather. And I mean, these are things that once you start studying them, you just learn it as you go along, and then
Hmm.
they're more easily recognizable. And I like the different logos as they change, because people's logos change and stamps change, and I don't know, it's fun. But again,
Yes.
there's so much to learn that you just do it piece by piece, and
Yeah. Yeah.
then it kind of sticks in your head. And that's where those groups really help, because you get to see, and then you get to see people submit pieces. You're like, I have a piece that looks like that. I'm going to follow this. I want the answer to that too. And yeah.
All right. So that's basically kind of what we talk about all the time, is you just have to kind of pour yourself into it as it relates to
Right.
learning about this stuff. So let's talk about now, I guess, because you've been in this game a long time, so you've seen a lot, you've experienced a lot. What do you think the future of vintage jewelry resale will look like in the coming years? Because now we've got so many things to think about, AI,
Yeah.
designers are actually taking vintage pieces and they're trying to recreate them in a more modern way.
Right. Right. Right.
So, what do you think the trends or the demand will be as it relates to vintage jewelry going forward?
Really good question. I think, well, obviously, when I started, there was much less competition, but that's
Right.
not a bad thing, because competition just breeds more buyers.
Yeah,
Um,
more demand.
yeah, more demand, more buyers. I tell people that all the time. On especially if, and when we're talking about live sales, I always say, if you're starting on a live sale, start with posting. Start posting your pieces so people know what you have. They start recognizing your taste. Otherwise, I mean, people aren't going to go in blind. They go, let's see what you have. But if they have an idea of what you sell, and they are already attracted to your taste, that's how you bring those people to your live sale. It's sort of the same thing, sort of the same concept. Things are much more competitive. I mean, there's so many more than when I started, but I have so many more buyers too.
Well, I
And
think you're right. You're right about the live selling, though, because I do believe that's going to be the trend. Like, we're going to, like, because even the big brands are getting into live
live
sales
sales,
online.
yeah,
So I
exactly.
think as it relates to not only vintage, but reselling in general,
In general, yes, in
live
general.
selling is the direction that we're going.
Right, because people want like that immediate satisfaction,
Uh-huh.
and it
And the
really does offer
interaction.
that. Yes,
They
and
want to feel the
interaction.
connection. Yeah, they want
I
to
mean,
feel.
yeah, people that love live sales don't go back generally to just sitting there in front of the eBay screen and going back away, because it's not as fun after that. This is
Hmm.
kind of where we're headed, and I know I feel that way, and I don't know, I like the fast pace of live auction. I like that a lot, and live sales are kind of the same thing. People really like that interaction. There's so much interaction in just a live sale, a non-action live sale. I mean, people are talking back and forth, and they're discussing, hey, I have one of those, and how are you? All kind of thing. And that's hard to get, but that's sort of where we're leaning towards. AI, I don't know, AI has been, I don't know where it's going. I know there's good and bad, but it's been wonderful for me, because I'm so obsessed with my pictures. Like, I've spent my whole career being obsessed with, how can I make my pictures better? How can I make my photos better? How can I do better in that area? Because that's the first thing people see when they're
Yes.
scrolling by, or in my marketing or whatever. Like, how can I make those better? And AI has been a huge, I mean, there's so many great apps to make your pictures pop and show more detail. And that's a big thing for me. That's like one of my obsessions, is how can I make my pics better? So in that way, AI has been really helpful. And then of course, AI is helpful in text now when you're posting, which is really cool.
Yeah.
What I found is because there are we know we're headed that way, because it's not going anywhere anytime soon, whether it be the economy or the trend or just the fact that it's just people find it smarter, more chic, and less expensive to buy resale or to buy vintage, where it's going to continue to go that way, because vintage is never going to go away as long as we have a past, right? So it's
Right.
important to, I think for me, I always consider, what am I selling now? Like, what am I buying for the immediate sale? And then I have a whole other like brain mode that is, what am I investing in? What are my investment
Mm.
pieces? And okay, so we're looking at, and this is just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the mail that came in today. So like, I know that, for example, Joan Rivers pieces from the 90s are growing in value since she passed. And because the construction was so well, and because that type of Y2K late 90s is really hot right now, they're growing in
Yeah.
value. So I find them, I buy them. Just like, I believe if you look at say some Joan Rivers pieces and and pieces that came from Saks, these more obscure designers from the late 90s, early 2000s, and you put someone like J. Crew, who's, if you ever look at their rhinestone necklaces, their rhinestone pieces were constructed so beautifully that
Oh, yeah.
I very much believe they're going to grow in value later on, those pieces. So I collect those as well. I mean, it's important to distinguish between, what am I selling now that's really hot? Y2K, rhinestone,
Mhm.
deco, those things are really big right now. And then pieces that are going to grow. Now, obviously, they're designer pieces that you're always going to want to grab. I feel that way about Lawrence Verba and also YSL and those kind of things. Those things are always going to, Tiffany, those things are always going to grow in value. They're always going to be great investments. But then there's things like we just talked about, J. Crew, Suzanne Summers. I mean, we're starting to recognize some of her pieces from the 90s and early 2000s are amazing and
I
completely,
know.
yes.
Yeah.
Didn't get the claim that they should have, so, but they're starting to. So if you can find pieces like that to invest in the future, I think people are starting to, since she passed, started to like recognize how great her work was. And
Mhm.
so I look for that kind of thing. And I'm not just mean people who pass, but I mean things that like maybe weren't. Kenneth J. Lane, his enamel pieces are really having a moment. People were like, these are really good pieces from the 90s, Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
And
thinking about what's going to grow in value. So not everything I'm buying is
right.
for my immediate satisfaction of turning. It is for also, this is really going to be something in a few years, and I'm going to hang on to this. And not everyone thinks that way, especially when they're getting started. But if you're finding those pieces on the way, you should recognize what is probably a great investment piece, and maybe don't sell it right away if you can, as well as, and have that also in a separate sort of stack.
Yeah, and I was just talking with one of my jewelry reseller friends, Brandon, and he has this amazing collection of the metal flower brooches. Like he's got hundreds of them.
60s enamel brooches, yes,
Yes.
I love those as well.
And
And they
so
are having a moment too, as well.
exactly, that's what I
I
was
have
going to
some
say.
beautiful ones. I like ones. I You can find people out there whose whole passion is restoring them. So like the colors,
Really?
fixing the chip paint, restoring, and I love those ones. I love those ones that are as bright, as beautiful as they were in the 60s. They're having a moment, but if you and you can, they're getting more in demand, and so they have
Well, I'm
definitely
glad you
risen.
told me that because I
Yeah,
have some of those metal flower
they're
enamel
wonderful,
brooches and
and
they're all beat up. They're all
yeah, they're
chipped. The
very
paint's
they're
coming
very
off.
hard to they're like hard to get at the same price they used to, because they're
Mhm.
really having a moment. But again, you can sell them now at a profit, or you can even hang on to them, because I just think that they're gonna be around for a while, because there's such a
Yeah.
specific mod like accessory that people love. And those,
Yes, and people
and
collect them and they love
yes.
them.
Do you see them when they're laid out? So if you just lay them out or put them on a mannequin,
Yes.
they're so cheery and bright, you know?
And beautiful and
Yes.
fun and whimsical and
Yeah.
colorful. Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, I see, and I always do this. I find them, I hold on to them for a while,
Yeah.
and then I sell them, and then I'm mad that I sold them because I wish I didn't sell them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So now I'm on the hunt for some more. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know those are
I love
super
them as well.
popular.
I've I've sold a bunch and I've purchased a bunch.
Yeah,
I always have some, and then I'm the same way. I'm always like, oh, I wish I hadn't sold that batch. But I
yeah.
feel that same way about Bakelite. I love Bakelite. It may not,
Yes,
and it goes up and down and up and down. And then there's pieces that like some of the single bangles. Okay, they don't go for what they used to go for. So so I will tend to like purchase those in bulk and like and or purchase those here and there, and then I'm happy to sell them in a bulk so that I can afford like the big Bakelite pieces, like the really strange, crazy, huge
yes,
bangles that are different rainbow colors of Bakelite and all of that, or the horses and
yes,
the dogs and things. So those are things that that will rise in value, like the enamel brooches. But yeah, I definitely have that mindset, like this is for immediate like consumption or sale, and then these are going somewhere else because I know they're my coins. I don't collect coins. I don't know anything about them, but those are my. I was telling my husband this today. He's like, we have this whole hutch full of things that are just sitting there. I'm like, these are my coins. If I knew something about coins, I would collect them, but I don't. But I know about this stuff. It's the same concept. Grows in value. Gonna have to
yes,
trust me on
yes.
this, John.
All right. Well, that is so cool. This is so exciting. My gosh, I could just talk about this kind of stuff all day. All right. So, this is what I wanted to ask you. Is that master class you and Sammy did, is it available
It
to
is.
watch or
She's
replay or
she picks my brain and gets it on camera and then goes to town. She has it all. She has the master class that I did. It
uh-huh.
called Vintage Joy for the Fashion Girl, or Fashion Seller, excuse me.
Okay.
And then I did I had we did a little glossary type thing that went along with it. She has the links if you want to pass them in there to purchase them. They're beyond affordable, and they are worth every penny. They're way
Okay.
affordable.
Okay. I'll message her because I didn't see it in the group, and I didn't know if that's where you can get it
She
from, or is
offers
it?
them every so often. Or you know what? I believe she offers them to new members, and they're quite popular when
Oh,
they realize they're like nothing to buy. I mean, the prices, I don't know, I think they went down again, so I won't even quote it. They're pretty inexpensive, but
okay.
a
Okay.
great place to start. That would be great if you put those in the links. I think that would be fabulous.
Yeah, yeah,
In the
because
comments.
I know
The
someone
comments.
will ask, someone will want to know, like, oh, how can I watch that class or whatever?
Absolutely, I would love that. And Odilia sells her collection. Get there on Facebook and say hi to me. It's
Okay,
new.
I'll put a link to that down in the
It's
show
yeah,
notes.
it's new, so y'all say hey.
And then you said, are you on Instagram too?
I am styled by Odilia.
Okay, so I'll
Styled
put
with a
all your
D.
links down there.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So anything else you want to share with our beautiful community before I let you go?
Just that, it's such a fun, I mean, we're not selling life sailing, hard equipment. This is fun stuff.
Yes,
And I think that's the point. I mean, the point is to come at it with like a passion and a love, and it just all sort of falls into place. That's what it did for me. I love the idea of sales, and I love the idea of like buying and selling. I always have. So for me, I'm primarily like a businesswoman who adores fashion. And that's kind of how it came for me. I like, if I'm going to be in business, like I'm going to do it with something I love. I wouldn't be good at selling insurance because I don't
right,
love it. But I love
right, right.
fashion and I love jewelry. And if you come at it in that respect, it's gonna be hard not to, it's just a way for me to go, this is what I love. I mean, everybody shops differently, but I buy things that I love. I don't have a single piece in my collection that I didn't curate personally myself and buy it because for some reason I loved it. Now there's vintage jewelry like out of this world and vintage bathing suits and things that I could never get away with. Doesn't mean I could wear them all, but I loved them when I saw them and I could see someone else loving them. And if you come at
Yes.
it like that, you're going to be pretty successful, I think.
Yes, yes. And like you said, I don't think this is ever going away. And I
No.
think those of us who love this will always love it.
Yes. Yes, it's true.
So there's always going to be a demand because
Always. We
we're
thought those
always
people
going to
that
want to
had
buy.
yeah, there was girls in the 60s, all those hippies that were wearing those 20s inspires because they loved their grandmother's stuff. That's,
Hmm.
we're doing the same thing, and it's going to be
Yes,
forever. Yeah.
yes. And it's also, we're preserving history, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't want these things to be forgotten.
No, we are. I've always said I was green before I even realized I was green because we are recycling memories and recycling history, and that's what it's all about. I think it's wonderful. I think we're in a wonderful position right now, not just like economy wise, but I mean like mindset wise about preserving history and being
Yeah,
green and not wasteful. I think we're just in a great place in history right now for our
yeah.
industry.
Yeah, yeah. And someone had told me too that she loves vintage and antique jewelry because to her they're like pieces of art, right?
Yes,
And
it's true.
she just appreciates the artisticness of it. And I said, yeah, that's so beautiful because it just makes you love it even more.
It's true. Somebody put like love and talent and their heart into a piece, and it could have been a long time ago, and we're still enjoying it. That's pretty
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you wonder who owned it,
I
who gave
know.
it to her? Where did she wear this piece? What was her life like? All of those things.
I
You always
know.
try to figure out what's the story or
It's yeah. Sometimes you get like it goes so long and realize, oh, I forgot to think about who owns this. I mean, all these years later, I still do that. I try not to get too into it because I mean, you can literally spend all day going, what are we at this? But I
Oh,
mean,
I know.
right? It's amazing.
I know.
You can't go too far in there. But that's why I love to find like pieces that still have like the notes attached or whatever. That's pretty cool.
Right. Or like the original box, and sometimes
You
it'll
know?
have a message in there or
And
something.
the date or something with the
Yeah,
old
yeah,
handwriting pencil. I love that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, all right, Odilia. It was so fascinating and exciting, to talk with you today.
Desiree.
I can't thank you enough for, spending time with us and sharing your knowledge. I'll definitely put all of your links in the show
Yay!
notes.
That was so
Yes.
fun. Thank you for inviting me. I think this was my
Yes.
first podcast. I think it was. Yeah.
Oh, I'm honored.
Yeah. Excited.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll be in touch soon.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.